Blessings, everyone. Thank you for joining me. It's an honor today to have again as my guest, Captain Peter Sarandinaki. Did I pronounce
Yeah,
that?
that's
Okay.
correct.
Okay. Since I last talked with Captain Peter, he's published his book. I encourage everyone to get it, and I'll put a link in the show description. When I was last talking to Peter, we were talking about his work with finding the remains of Grand Duke Michael Alexandrovich. He was the brother of Nicholas II, youngest brother of Nicholas II, and also heir to the family at the time of Nicholas's, abdication. I wanted to show some pictures here. I did since we last talked. Um, I found some really nice pictures. Michael.
Yes.
So there he is. So at the end of the book, Captain Peter, you end the with the last chapter. It's about your work with finding the remains of Grand Duke Michael. So where is that those efforts right now?
We we found what had happened was that we were able to get on the radio. Um, the, we all we went by was really the killer statements at first, and I was able to get on the radio, and we asked for people to help, to come forward if they had any information. And
Right.
we had various people come forward, but which diverted us from our work. Um, but let me shut off my phone. We found a woman came forward who as a little girl used to go swimming in the river opposite the city, just where two rivers meet,
Mhm.
and the Gaiva River and also the Kama River.
Mhm.
Um, and Some of the killers, were known to be from that area. One of them
Mhm.
had a home there, and she said that when she was about 8 years old, her mother told her that when they were at the beach, because it was sandy soil, and uh, they the mother said, "Remember this as long as you live, that in this spot here is the burial of the Czar." She said the Czar is double Czar. In other words, the Czar's brother. And
Mhm.
and 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 eventually through the years, people on that site, there's a bridge nearby, and you could see that site from the bridge. People saw crosses there,
Really?
and but now the crosses aren't there. And sometimes what had happened was that the Kama River rises to a certain level while everything is washed out. So so she said that she would show us a spot, and it seemed like a very interesting story. What she had said was that um, and it's kind of gory, and in any case, when Michael was killed, two men came back with a carriage and with a flatbed, and they took the took the bodies to somewhere, to a man, and asked him to anyway they to get rid of the bodies, and so they took the eventually they took the bodies, or I think they might have dismembered them according to her story, and took them across the river to the spot and buried them. And the
Hmm.
reason why her grandfather told her mother that story, that girl's mother that story, is because he was afraid. He saved the killer's life in their earlier years, and they were always good friends. And so in any case, the woman said that that's where the story came, was from her father, but from her grandfather. Sorry, the woman is a little younger than I am, but it's interesting, you know. So we went there with backhoes, and because the soil is very hard, and started opening up, and there was really went through with radar first, and we opened everything up, and there was nothing there. And she said, "Well, maybe it's closer to the river on this side, and what." And so, but there was a lot of brush and tree branches had fallen and rocks. So we cleared that whole area. And when we searched with our radar, we found an anomaly that was almost 3 meters by 2 meters. In other words, 9 feet, about 9 feet by 6 feet. And it was about maybe 4.5, 5 foot deep.
Wow.
And you know, the killers initially said that we buried them in a grave that was like 10 foot deep. Well, there's a lot of washed through the, it's been over 100 years,
Yeah.
and the river has risen and, you know, risen and gone down all those 100 years. So it washed away a lot of the soil, but still there's a sign there. And the anomaly, the radar picked up a change in the soil. Something is there. We don't know if there's actually a grave there or some rocks. We don't know. So that will be so we this Saturday my friends will go there. As a matter of fact, they have Russian television filming and all this. They're making a film on Russia TV1 special on all our work in Russia, all our searches and what we tried and failed and so forth. Actually, those I should say there weren't failures, because I know that where we searched, Michael wasn't there. We can say that. So that's not a failure. It's positive that he's not here.
Yeah.
And so hopefully we'll find him. And if it's a chance, you know. And I never got a chance to open it up when I was there because I got sick on bad mushrooms. And I just couldn't function until I left for home. So in any case, that's what's happening, and all that. Another story about Parm is that the remains of Countess Anastasia Hendrikova and Ekaterina Schneider were found.
Who are they?
Ekaterina Schneider and Anastasia Hendrikova was the lady in waiting of the Empress. And when she was part of the entourage that went to Tobolsk with the Czar and the family, so was Schneider. Schneider used to teach the young princesses coming from Germany Russian and all that. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I remember them, yes.
Okay, so they were taken, these two ladies were taken to Perm, and in September 4th, 1918, they were taken to the field and killed. Their heads were smashed in. So they were buried on the side of a ditch, and someone who had gotten away, run away from the Bolsheviks, told the White Army, which came in afterwards, about these two women, and they found the remains, so they gave them a proper burial.
Wow.
So then the Bolsheviks come back, and they see the grave sites for these two women, and they destroyed the grave.
Right.
And not only that, well, in any case, there was no grave. And while we were searching for Michael, a nun had come to us and asked us if we would help search for the remains of the two ladies, in searching for two bodies in a cemetery.
Wow.
So that was interesting. Wow. We ended up searching, and we found anomalies, or changes in the soil where there were graves, but we're searching for two women that were buried in the same grave. And the grave was special in the sense that it was lined with wood, and this was fancy. And the one coffin was metal, and the other one was just wood.
Oh,
But there were, so we found like 5 unmarked graves, and they dug down. But I was not there to watch them as they were opening them. And it said that they dug all the way down. So then after I left, I asked my friend, who's a radar expert, to help the church. And he ended up finding the grave, which was an unmarked grave, which was 10 foot deep.
wow.
In about the area where he felt that the grave of these two women should be. And he found 8 sets of remains, like 2 and 2, 2 and 2. In the grave, but they and then that going down to 8 feet, and then those people were going to quit digging. He says, "No, you got to go to 10 feet." He went down to 10 feet, and he found 2 bodies of these 2 women whose heads had been smashed in.
Wow.
One age 30, one age 60, and which matches the age, And so forensic testing was done. All kinds of forensic testing was done on the remains, including some of the items were found in the grave in their, on their bodies. The sign of there were photographs, of course, taken of the 2 women, after their death, and so the damage to their skulls and everything matched photographs, and there were different things that they used to identify. We tried DNA, but I had the wrong person they did DNA of the remains, but we had to match it to someone, and I did that, and except that the relative maybe was too far away or was not related at all. Somebody made a mistake there. So that didn't work out. But the Russian church had accepted the remains as those of Countess Anastasia Gedikova and Ekaterina Schneider, and gave them a proper burial now, and this monument to them and all that right now in Perm.
Nice. Yeah, people need to remember that when we're talking about these historical figures in the Russian Orthodox Church, they're also religious figures as well. So it's more important than just a historical issue. It's also religious as well. I got a couple more pictures of Michael I wanted to share. So here he is with Olga. I think that's his sister Zenya. I'm not sure.
Yes.
Okay. And oh, I went too far. That's your great grandfather. Let's see. And that's Michael's son. Yeah, who passed away unfortunately. So it looks like the scenario of Michael's death and burial followed that of Nicholas and his family, that they were killed in one location but then buried in another, right? So
yes, and the Romanovs, the family. Well, Michael was killed first, and he was killed on in June, a month before the royal family was killed in Ekaterinburg, and we in our searches, I searched for 10 years. I had a British, American, and Russian forensic experts working for me, with me, all donated their time and equipment. And, the government backed us up, and, eventually, at first, nobody knew me, but as I kept coming back, people started noticing it. And of course, everybody wanted to help. And we received a lot of help, equipment, and transportation and food and all that from the church and from private companies and so forth. But every year couldn't find them. But our search area was not just a small field. I mean, we had the killer statements, and the killers. There's 5 statements that we have, and all the killers lied. And so we took the statements, translated them into English, and gave them to former FBI psychologist, and who to ask them who lied the least. And turns out that there's a man named Novoselov who was taken by the killers with them, just as an afterthought, in a sense. And what he said he did is that on the site where they killed Michael in the area, he carved the initials MR. VK. In other words, Michael Romanov, Grand Duke, or Mikhail Romanov, Veliki Knyaz, and we found that tree. We found those markings, and I don't know if I have a picture of the book, but we found that. Actually, I have a forensic.
You mentioned it, I remember.
Yeah, I have forensic botanist from Denver. And she and another fellow, a writer who came with us, and they searched. She found the 3 oldest trees and just checked them, and by chance she found the initials, and she told me that. So, and also, one of the things is in the stories that like I said, we have a very good idea where they killed Michael Romanov. Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
And where they killed Michael Romanov and Nicholas Johnson, but we don't know where he was buried.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Okay. Because 5 people went there to do the killing, but then they left them underbrush, and then 2 came back and buried them somewhere or did something with their bodies. So all kinds of theories came up. In the statements, the killer said that we were going up the Solikamsky Trail, and then we went off to the right. Well, going off to the right about 4 or 5 miles from the city, there was a cutoff going into a parallel road, and they both met later on at the train crossing. So when one road was washed out or something like that, people could take divert to the other road and then go to the train crossing, and that I believe that. But now where the train crossing is, not the train crossing, but where the road diverts to the right.
Yeah.
There's like a dog leg there.
Yeah.
There's a jail there.
Yeah.
And basically, we couldn't search at all there. But we found that road that goes from the small what do you call that? Bifurcation, not bifurcation, but anyways, a small branch that goes off to the other road. We found that with our equipment, so we know it was there. And then we found the rest of the roads, which are no longer there. The old Solikamsky road, and then one killer said, "Well, we went after we turned to the right, we went a whole kilometer. So who do you believe? So And then another guy says, "Oh, we went up to where there's a road going um, basically up the not directly up the hill, but it transverses the Red Hill, which is a very steep hill, and there's a flat area on top where people had farms and their gardens and all that. Um, that that road was actually used till the 1960s,
Wow.
and then it got washed out. So when we investigated and found the markings on the tree, but we had also found that road that transverses the hill,
Mm.
but that's all washed out. And my forensic botanist found that by first of all by looking at the grasses, the certain grass will grow on very hard soil, or other grass, a different grass will grow where softer soil, not compacted soil. So she could tell exactly where the road was by looking at the grass that's growing. Very, very interesting. So we think that they maybe never made it up that hill because the carriages were too heavy, and so they killed them on the bottom of the hill, and we know the spot. But again, now what they did with the bodies, you know, is still under
Yeah.
investigation, and so the search is not over until it's over.
And it turns out the Nicholas, and we'll get to that a little bit later. Nicholas and his family, they were eventually buried, what was it, 3 miles away from where they were killed? So it's quite a distance, or 4 miles.
Well, the reason for that is because um, my when the bodies of the Czar and the family and the servants were taken to the Four Brothers mine area,
Right.
there were about 50 people that were waiting for them to kill the Czar, and
Yeah.
they were very upset that the Czar was already dead when he was brought there.
Yeah.
And so that's where they took off all their clothes, and they found the diamonds, and they started burning the clothes, and they threw the bodies into the open mine shaft, which
Yeah.
was like about 35, 40 feet.
Yeah. I want to
And,
get to that.
yeah.
Now, with your permission, I want to talk about your book. So your book, um, I could like separate it, I guess, into two halves. The first, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seemed like the first half of the book was the story of your family, especially your grandmother. And then the second half of the book is more about you and your search for the Romanov
Yes.
remains, and then also Michael. So it was really fascinating. Your great grandfather was, correct me if I'm wrong, Sergei Razanov?
Romanov, yes.
Rozanov. So I did some research about him. He's, very, well-known historical figure. And could you say anything a little bit about him?
Well, Romanov was
Here he is, right here.
Rosanov. First of all, Rosanov's great grandfather was Marshal Kutuzov,
Hmm.
who threw Napoleon out, fought Napoleon.
Wow.
And so Rosanov went into the military from age 6 in military schools. He became a general. He was a colonel during fighting the Japanese
Here's another
in
picture.
Siberia, and then he was fighting on the Russia's western front with against the Austrians with his regiment. He was first of all, before the First World War, he was the commander of the Venden Regiment in Pienza. Pienza is a city about, I don't know, about 500 miles south east of Moscow, and that's where the family he had a horse farm, and he supplied the horses for his regiment. Now, he was also a very good friend with a man named Nicholas Sokolov,
Mm.
who
I
was a
want to get,
judge.
yeah, I want to get to that too.
Yeah, he was a judge, a procurator, and an investigator. So Rosanov was eventually, at first, he was asked to join the Red Army by Trotsky, and he, of course, he couldn't say no because otherwise he would have been killed on the spot. And then, of course, then he went to the White Army and also started working with a general named Kutepov, who was a White Army spy master. And what their purpose was, Rosanov, and he used his daughter Anna um, to 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 Anna used to send her into the Lubyanka prison, a real huge.
That's your grandmother.
Uh,
That's your grandmother, right?
what's that?
Anna's
Yeah,
your grandmother.
my grandmother. Yeah,
Yeah.
you sent my grandmother into the Lubyanka prison dressed like a cleaning girl, and she
Wow.
would pick up the laundry from officers who were about to be killed.
Wow.
And in that laundry were pieces of paper with the names and addresses of officers who needed to be saved. And one day I asked her, how many trips did you go in there? She says, countless. Doesn't even remember the number of times she went in there. And one day I stood in front of that jail and I said, my God, what nerve she had, So she was a small lady, about 5'3" or so, but
Wow.
powerful,
You wrote,
very
yeah,
powerful.
you wrote here in your book about your great grandfather. In secret, he was working with the anti-Bolsheviks in both Moscow and Petrograd in a movement to rescue as many good military officers as possible from Bolshevik firing squads. So how were these men how did they get out of the country?
Well, they not out of the country, but they were
Right.
sent south, and they had set up like
Oh,
an underground railroad. And
oh,
Sokolov was part of this as well. Sokolov, Sokolov and my great grandfather used to go hunting together at well, and so that was their love. They love hunting, and Sokolov knew the forest quite well. So he used to lead those soldiers through a certain part of the forest so that they could escape, and then hand them off to somebody else, like that. And that's how the Southern Army was started being formed by people like that.
oh, sorry.
Um, so finally, the Reds. Well, in any case, Sokolov, Rosanov ended up being the military governor. Admiral Kolchak sent Rosanov to be the military governor of Vladivostok and the Holodomor region, where he had British, American, French, and Italian and Czech troops, and so that was a major thing there. And even after Kolchak was killed, my great grandfather lasted a little bit, and then he was pushed out, and then the Japanese saved the family. In the meantime,
Can we backtrack a little bit? I'm sorry,
yeah,
Captain Peter. So your grandfather or great grandfather uh became an officer in the White Army. And the people that don't, and correct me, people that might not know a lot about the Russian history,
oh,
is
okay,
that
okay.
is it following the Bolshevik Revolution in October, there was a Russian Civil War. So you had the whites who were, I'm oversimplifying, were the monarchists, and then the Reds were the communists. And then your great grandfather fought with the White Army. But during that time, and this is where I think the chunk of the book is really good. It's like a novel. Your grandmother had to travel across Russia, right? By themselves.
Yes. My great grandmother, Anna's mother, decided to take her to Rosanov
Yes.
had escaped to Siberia,
Yeah.
and then leaving his wife and two daughters behind. And so the woman had to follow. And so my great grandmother finally managed to escape, and then they went through monasteries, and they followed what they called the nuns route, where nuns used to go from one monastery to the other, except that some priests were leading towards the Reds. So they would be told, don't go there because, they're more red. So they would bypass that and go somewhere else, So it is so they'll finally get to the Volga River, and that's where the front was. And somehow my great grandmother found a boat to take them across the Volga, and then took them to a hotel that was pretty rowdy with soldiers, and went on to look for someone to help. So my grandmother, Anna, had carried a Nagant pistol with 7 bullets.
Wow.
And she was told by her father was, you use 6 bullets and the last one's for yourself if you get captured. In other words, you kill your mother, your sister, and then you shoot other people, and then yourself. Kill yourself so that
you wrote here, Peter, there were 550 monasteries across the nation, and for the 3 travelers, each one seemed an oasis in the desert, a place of peace and security for at least for a day or 2 of rest. And people don't realize how big Russia is. It's still the biggest country on Earth. So I mean, to travel across Russia is like not a small feat.
There was in one of her, I have a newspaper clipping that I did not. There's a picture of a camel pulling a cart, and she wrote, "This is how we traveled through the Russian steppes."
Amazing.
Which are the southern steppes. And the thing is that, once a woman escaped, that there were Cossacks, bands of bandits, and all that sort of stuff, roaming around, and all of a sudden, they see cavalry, soldiers, horsemen coming at them. Well, they stopped the carriage, they crossed themselves, and they waited. And it turns out there were whites. For lucky, and so they were able to so they questioned my great grandmother. When she said she was the wife of General Romanov, she says, well, if you're the wife of General Romanov, you should know who was the head of this army and that army and this and that. And she
knew.
She knew everybody, because she helped her husband go to the general staff school and all that, and she knew who's who.
Yeah.
So our family is a military family. They always fought in wars, and it was just a sad thing, but somehow Romanov, was stationed in Ufa, which is like, not far from Ekaterinburg, but still. And then when the the white soldiers took Ekaterinburg,
I wanted to get
this is like a week after the murder of the royal family. Exactly.
So this is the Ipatiev House in Ekaterinburg.
Right.
And your great grandfather was one of the first people there.
He according to my grandmother, he gave the order to tear down there were a set of double fences around the whole Ipatiev House, so people could not see in. And my great grandfather ordered the troops to tear down the fence.
Wow.
And then my grandfather, who was his adjutant, his name was Kirill Narishkin, ended up, they went inside. But my great-grandfather just didn't have the nerve to go down into the basement. to see what went on, and my grandfather did.
So the Ipatiev House, I hate this picture because it's very depressing. So the Ipatiev House is where the royal martyrs were murdered. People say assassinated, but
Yeah,
they were murdered. And in this, I hate this picture too. In this room in the that building. So one of the reasons it seems like, and you talked about this in your book too, is that there was a rush all of a sudden to murder Nicholas and his family, is that during the Russian Civil War, the communists there in Ekaterinburg were very worried because the White Army was getting close, and of course, if they reached Ekaterinburg and Nicholas and his family were still alive, they would free them. So they rushed this murder, and
yes, and they try to keep it all a secret.
yeah.
They actually they murdered everyone. That's Nicholas Sokolov, the investigator.
And your great grandfather appointed him, correct? Your
My great grandfather introduced him
oh,
to the judge, to to the to the general staff as the men to do the investigation. At first, there were two men, Sergeyev and Namyotkin, who started the investigation for the White Army. Even though they did a good job, the two weren't functioning as they weren't as trustworthy to the whites, really, because they were afraid to act. And in the end, both of them were shot by the Bolsheviks. But they were afraid. They were afraid to act, and so they got rid of them. And so when then my great grandfather was already there, he introduced Sokolov as the man. Sokolov had also escaped from Pienza, and he dressed like a peasant, and he walked all the way to across towards the Volga and off to Siberia too. He had his own story as well.
and then your great grandfather and him reconnected again, which is
They
interesting.
reconnected again, yes, and then finally when Sokolov after well. Let's just talk about Sokolov's work then.
I have a picture of him at the. Oh, I had a picture of him. I thought these maps were interesting. Real quick, these are Soviet maps of sort of commemorating the Russian Civil War and the eventual, victory of the Red Army, to show how huge, to travel from Russia and Europe all the way out here to Vladivostok. People have no idea. It's on the Pacific way out here.
Oh yeah, it took some time,
Here's another map. This is it. Oh, sorry, Captain Peter.
But basically they reached Vladivostok in 1919.
Okay.
Wow. And at that time, my great grandfather was in Vladivostok as a commander. There was American troops. He had 20,000 American troops as well there, under General Graves. And Graves didn't particularly like my great grandfather because he felt my great grandfather was a murderer. Well, he did. The thing is that the way the Reds were, so there was Red Terror and there was White Terror, and my great grandfather also was part of the White Terror. So he had, I don't know how many people killed, but there was in the Army, U.S. Army found an order that had been written by Romanov to his troops saying that when you come to a village that's all red and they do not they don't support you or whatever, then just decimate the men, don't harm the women or children. In other words, kill every 10th one. Or just if they're all red, then kill them all, basically. This is civil war. It's like if you read the book, if people will read the book, then see that what my grandmother in Pienza heard was a shooting at night, people getting shot all night long. They were taking people, officers and army officers and soldiers or priests or people from different walks of life who were had something or they were either wealthy or whatever or represented something. They killed them all, and so this was mass murder to the nth degree as far as what Bolsheviks were doing. But in any case, let's go back to Sokolov here, since you got his photo.
Yeah.
Sokolov started his investigation at the Four Brothers mine area, and he continued the work that Sergeyev and Namotkin did. He was able to locate the spots that they mentioned, and
now sorry, Captain Peter. Now the Four Brothers mine is where
it's 15 kilometers north of Ekaterinburg,
and that's
where the bodies of the Romanovs were taken and then dumped into a mine shaft.
But
the Bolsheviks tried to collapse the mine shaft with grenades and everything, but it didn't work. Okay. And what happened was there were about 50. Yes, that's the mine shaft right there. And if you could see to the left of the picture, well, actually, let me see, looking from the cross back the other way to the right, to the right of that photograph, that's a open platform. And when Sokolov came there, the open platform had a fresh bed of clay. And this is what Sokolov told my grandmother. And this is what I told Dr. Alexander Avdonin, who found the remains when we were doing our searches right in this spot here, where there was no church, nothing, just woods. And in 1998 and in 1999, we discovered the site of 3 bonfires. One small bonfire right, let's say, behind this tree, in the middle of the mine shaft. But that was for basically for mosquitoes and so forth, because it's a very high amount, so it creates smoke. But to the right side of the photograph, there's a set of steps, and that spot right there that they put the steps on, we found the other bonfire where they burnt the clothes. On the side of the mine shaft, on the side, we found a pile of stones, and that pile of stones came from the bottom of the open pit that you see there. But that's closed now, but it used to be about 30, 40 feet deep. It wasn't as wide also. Sokolov just opened it up, and then later on it was opened up by other people, Avdona and so forth, searching the sides. But in any case, during our searches, for instance, I was sitting down going through that pile of stones because it matched the photograph, one of Sokolov's photographs. And my friend, Dr. Sergei Nikitin, said, wait a minute, this pile of stones is right here from this photograph. It's the same pile of stones. So we started going through it. And I'm sitting there and sitting on a very uncomfortable little chair, and like a bench. Anyway, very low. My knees were up to my head, just
Dear.
about. And so we're sifting there, and all of a sudden I found a Nagant bullet from a Nagant pistol.
Mm.
It's one of the bullets that they used to shoot at the girls, and then the Tsar and the royal family. It was because when they undressed them, you see, the girls, and every, they had jewelry, diamonds, and all kinds of things. And the bullets, Alexis had 2 sets of jewelry on him, and the bullets would just bounce off. It's like, and it's like he was bulletproof.
Their
But
underclothes.
but the bullets were stuck in their clothing, so when they undressed them, the bullet fell out.
Mm.
Or then they brushed everything. They swept everything so they would fall into the open pit. And then when Sokolov came, he dug everything out from the open pit, where he also found Anastasia's dog under a false wooden floor. I mean, these guys, they were hiding the dog even. And and the reason for hiding everything, hiding all the evidence, is because at that time Russia was signing the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, and the communists did not want to tell the Germans that these girls were dead. So they want to keep that secret.
Alexandra was related to the German royal family and
Right.
in Hesse-by-Rhine.
Kaiser.
Yeah. So they were well
through the Hesse family.
Yeah, the Hesse family. So, but a lot of the royal families of Europe at that time were related. I mean, Nicholas was related to the British royal family as well.
Yeah,
So,
they're all one family, really.
Yeah.
In any case, so I found a bullet, and the next day I didn't find anything. The following day, I'm cutting with, I had a little garden shovel, and I see an object that's round and clear. So I'm blind in one eye, so my depth perception is not that great. So I grabbed it, I looked at it, and it was a white topaz stone from one of the girls' necklaces.
Wow.
And Sokolov found 14 of those stones. I found the 15th.
Wow.
It was just amazing. And this was like September of, it was September of 1988, and going into October, and the snow started coming down.
That's it.
And it was miserable. So we ended up taking that whole pile of stones into the city, where we worked behind this one building, where a parking lot, just sifting through all the stones. And once we finished looking through every stone and we found more bullets. I found a button that belonged to somebody's pants, military button, with a double eagle. We found gold. We found pieces of really beautiful green emerald. And of course, I didn't dare even to take a little stone from the ground with me. It's like but I was given. I brought some soil back. That's it. So that was tough, because we didn't find Alexis and Maria then, or we searched for them there. They weren't there. So then I asked Avdonin if we could.
Now, Alexander Avdonin was the man who, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. He was aware of the actual burial place
Alexander Avdonin and Geli Ryabov, a filmmaker, decided to search for the Romanovs, and they were able to get a letter which is I have in back of my book. I have a copy of that Yurovsky letter.
Right,
I had
right, right.
my friend Margarita translated it into English, which tells exactly what they did and how they did it and where and how they buried the Tsar and the family.
Now,
Except that,
this is the location of where the bodies were actually
well,
buried.
this is right. And this is a photo. This is Peter Yermakov, the second in command of the Bolsheviks, who in charge of the killing and also the burial of the Romanovs. And he in this photograph, he is standing, saying, "I'm standing." In the back, it said, "I'm standing on the graves of the Tsar."
Mm,
That's the back of the photographs,
mm.
and that is the actual bridge and the actual grave. The family is still under those railroad ties. See, for to right behind them is the Koptiki Road, which is to the he's facing south, and to the north is the Four Brothers Mine area behind him, and the in the other direction is uh the the city.
It seemed like Peter, sorry to interrupt you. It seemed like that that during the Soviet period, that oh, I wouldn't say a lot of people, but a number of people knew about the location of
No,
the bit the
well,
bit.
they're the ones who did it, but they kept it a secret. Not
Okay.
every They kept it a secret, and eventually, by the time when Avdonin got to there, this whole bridge was covered with soil already. Because the soil comes up from the leaves and everything. And it creates more soil. And so the only way they could tell that there was a bridge there is one, the man that was with Avdonin climbed up on a tree and because where do you search in the Kaptiki Road? I mean, it's you're talking 3-4 miles,
Oh, okay.
and go. But how do you find it? Well, Ben climbed up on a tree and he saw the outline of the bridge, and he pointed to Avdonin, and they started taking core samples, and they found really black soil underneath, and then they opened up one or two ties, and they found three skulls right there. Um, so
Was that originally in 1979 and then they covered it back up again?
78.
Okay, 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 okay. No,
Yeah.
so the Soviets had an incentive for keeping the location secret because I understand the reason why they eventually tore down the Ipatiev House is that it had become like a pilgrimage shrine for,
Exactly.
and so they I don't remember, it was Boris Yeltsin, I guess, who tore it down, or
Yeltsin had it torn down. Yeah.
so they didn't want this also to become a place of pilgrimage. It would have been a big problem.
This is not really a place of, even right now, because the church does not believe that these,
I have a
has
picture.
not
Right.
accepted the. Yeah, that's good. The church has not accepted these remains as those of the Romanovs yet. You see,
It seemed like in the
so
book, it seemed like in the book, maybe you mentioned that they were getting close, but COVID had caused some problems and
they're
things
they're
were
getting
delayed.
close, but not, because right now they were getting close to doing the vote, but things always happen. Oh, right now there's a war going on,
Yeah, you're correct.
and so they put that on, this whole thing on hold. In the meantime, the people who are there's a whole bunch of people who are against the remains, against these remains, as they're saying, "Oh, DNA is no good." We, you know, when the remains, the grave of Alexis and Maria were found, it said, the killer said that, oh, the we buried Nicholas and the family, the 9 sets of remains, but 2 sets of remains we continued burning not far from this grave. What's not far? And so, where this photo was taken from, we were searching this whole photo into this whole area to the grave, all the way to the grave, in 2004, and that was my friend Sergei Nikitin in charge of that search, and I was there too.
Is this the main spot where the
Yes,
bodies?
that's where 9 sets of remains were found.
Okay. And then are one of these markers where
these tell the story. That's all. These
okay.
are
Oh, okay.
markers that
Okay.
songs that tell the story.
How
Except
far?
that now, for instance, now they have religious processions from Ekaterinburg all the way to the Four Brothers Mine area. With 60,000 people go.
Wow.
But this area here is bypassed.
Huh.
This is the actual grave and all that, proven through DNA. And I had the U.S. Army do DNA on the remains. I had the FBI laboratory do remains. You could read that on the book. But still, the church, because the church has not accepted the remains of those of the Romanovs, this area is just forgotten. I just got a letter from a friend who's a curator in the museum and Romanov Museum in Ekaterinburg, and the letter was written in 2012 or so, 2013, where they're asking the bishop if they could serve a remembrance, a memorial service for the royal family right here in this spot. He said, and so the answer from the bishop was, that's not necessary. I mean, that's their attitude. Even the present bishop over there. I mean, these people are unbelievable. It's just so. I don't know what to do. I mean, frankly, the reason why I started searching for Michael Romanov after finishing the search here in 2009, 2008, we finalized the DNA studies. I brought on board the U.S. Army DNA lab when the remains of Alexis and Maria were found 70 meters from the spot here. Okay, to the southeast.
I was going to ask you that. Okay.
Yeah, I organized the DNA studies, and I brought on board the U.S. Army DNA lab, the University of Innsbruck DNA lab, Moscow Vavilevsky Institute, and then the U.S. Army trained the scientists from Ekaterinburg on the latest for DNA techniques. So DNA was done.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that in the book you talked about how the Russian Orthodox Church in Russia, repeated a lot of those.
I had 5. Yes, I had basically there were 5 labs originally that did 4 labs that did the DNA studies, and then I did other DNA studies, with the FBI. So that's 5 that I'm involved with, and then that was in the year 2008, and then on the very same day where we announced the results that were positive results, all 4 labs DNA matched. Not only that, in 1891, the Tsarevich Nicholas traveled to Japan, where he traveled to the city of Otsu, Japan, where he was wounded by a sword, a Japanese policeman. He was cut on the right side of the head. Well, his shirt had blood on it.
That was fascinating, and they still had the shirt.
And somehow that shirt ended up at the Hermitage Museum.
Wow.
And so the museum had a program to do to put everything into computerized their whole inventory, and then they opened the drawer, they found these shirts, been there, laying there for years. They came from another museum, So the scientists, Dr. Evgeny Rogayev, and the scientists from Ekaterinburg went to St. Petersburg, and they couldn't take a sample of the shirt, but they were able to wet the blood with with super clean water, right?
Mm,
And then take like a dab that, and they were able to get a blood sample of Nicholas II.
right.
And so when they did the DNA of that blood, they had Nicholas' actual DNA.
Yeah.
So when it came time to the U.S. Army had done DNA of the bones, and Innsbruck had done DNA of the bones. So the U.S. Army and Innsbruck matched 100%.
Wow.
So when Ekaterinburg and Rogaev came with their results, 34 points along the DNA chain had to match 100%, and they did.
Yeah.
34. I mean, you try to win the lottery now, you have to match 6 numbers, right?
Exactly.
But here, to match 34 numbers,
Yeah.
combinations, it's impossible. It's a mathematically impossible thing, but all of them match 100%. So there was no question that, yes, this is Tsar Nicholas II. And so I was, when the DNA announcements were made, I was the last one to talk, and that's how my book starts, really,
Yeah.
And I hear that the patriarch Alexis II had died.
Yeah.
I said, well, there goes the ball game, because the next patriarch might not be conducive to. So as it turns out, yes, the next patriarch, Kirill, did not accept the remains, and or did not accept our findings because they were not involved in the process. Their excuse, and or they said, oh, there's another word that they use, but it's just like, come on, it's like, so I was angry. I was really angry, but because I brought in the best labs in the world basically to do this, and
But
so
they
I said,
but since then they have retested the samples and they
yeah,
reached
but
the
that
same
was in two, yeah,
conclusion.
but that's when I decided to search for Michael Romanov,
Okay.
and that's when my search was in 2009. The next year, I went to Perm and started the searches. Meantime, in 2015, a new commission was formed
Right.
to retest everything that
Good.
was tested before had to be redone, and they took the remains of the Romanovs, which were interred in the St. Catherine's Chapel at the Peter Paul Fortress, and they took them out of there and put them in some monastery in Moscow or whatever it was. I don't know where they are, and the remains are still there, not back in the Peter and Paul Fortress. I even gave them an icon that's in St. Catherine's Chapel. You see it in photographs and all that. That was an icon that the nuns in the
Any more pictures?
do you have that picture? No, this is
This
St.
is in
Peter.
this is in Ekaterinburg, the
Yes, that is the church on the blood.
where the Ipatiev House used to stand. Now,
That's where
yeah.
it is to stand. Yeah. So,
No,
uh,
oh, sorry,
uh,
Captain Peter. Some people might not understand why this is important. They might like, well, who cares? But if you're not Orthodox or perhaps Roman Catholic, you might not, this might be something you don't comprehend. But since the time of the Roman martyrs in the catacombs, Christians have revered the relics of the martyrs and of holy people and of saints, and that means their remains. So it's not just a historical question. It's again, it's a religious issue, and it's important
well,
for Orthodox people that these remains be found verified and then honored and revered in a place of hope.
Exactly. And I have to tell you that when they were cutting the bones, and I'm going to tell you, this is something that I didn't put in my book, and I'll tell you because you're an Orthodox, yeah, Christian. Um, when they were cutting the remains, my friend Dr. Sergei Nikitin, who did the facial reconstructions of the
Mhm.
Romanovs, um, he was there at the morgue while they were doing it. And what he did is he put a piece of paper underneath the saw as they were sawing the bones, and he got a piece of paper, and then he had like a quarter sized, like all the shavings, right, with scotch tape on them, to hold them in place. And he gave me the that of all the, from
Wow.
Botkin to everybody, 11 sets of remains,
Wow.
all from shavings, right? So they were brought to me by my wife's cousin, Ilya Tolstoy, who came to America, and these. So I took this piece of folded piece of paper and put it by our wedding icons in my bedroom. And my wife and my mother-in-law, who's passed away now, were witness to this. That I came back to my bedroom an hour later, the whole bedroom smelled like roses.
Wow.
And so when I took that piece of paper from the icon, I opened it up, and from the Tsar's little bones and from Bodkin, the smell was of roses was so strong that it hurt the back of my nose.
Beautiful.
And then so I gave half of it to Father Victor Potapov in Washington D.C., and he was able to make an icon with that. I
Wow.
used it for an icon, and then eventually I gave. I don't know. At that time, I didn't feel I had the right to keep anything like that. So I gave it to another priest. So I gave it like that, so that could be venerated in the church.
Yeah.
But I've had more experiences with the remains like that as well. So even when we carried the remains back to America, every time I opened up the bag, all of a sudden I get roses, the smell of roses
That's
coming
great.
from that.
That's
You know, you
beautiful.
you, you
I,
know, some people might not understand this, but if you
I
if
do.
you know, like the statue, the icon of Jose, or the Hawaiian mirror icon, where the
I
mirror
know.
that's coming in, these remains didn't produce any mirror or anything, but to produce us that fragrance of so strong, so beautiful, that so it gave me the strength to continue with my work.
Um, and I don't have any Russian blood in me at all. And but in 2018 I was very ill, and I spent a lot of time in my room in bed, and I had a laptop computer next to my sick bed, and I just started listening to a lot of podcasts on YouTube. I think I came across something you did, and I just started watching a lot of stuff about Russian history and the Romanovs, and I was touched by their story, although I'm not Russian. And I started to pray for their intercession, and I got well. And that was one of the reasons I came to Orthodoxy. So
Uh-huh.
they're powerful. They're not just people that lived 100 years ago and were killed and dumped in a ditch somewhere. They're very powerful people that are still working in the world today. I wanted to read something, so I don't want to keep you too long. Something that you wrote that touched me, and I thought it kind of encapsulated a lot of your work. And you wrote, "It wasn't a personal project, nor a case of me reaching for glory or credit of any kind. Bringing closure to the Romanov executions was simply a dream I'd carried inside of me from the earliest days of my grandmother's stories. I hated to think I get choked up. I hated to think of those small skeletons still lying in the cold earth, in unmarked graves. No one deserves that, least of all children, even less murdered children. I thought that was beautiful that, your work, your tireless work, brought those kids out of the forgotten place that they were. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just the whole case. I mean, you know, it's not just their death, but it's also uh, the countless number of deaths. Because of that. First of all, even I was also taken by the unfairness, even now to this day, towards his family, the unfairness, the hatred, to try to stop giving them the actually the dignified burial they deserve, or well, saints aren't buried, but still the dignified ending they deserve, and services and so forth. But the patriarch and all the metropolitans and bishops have to be present for this, and they're not. I mean, they're torn up. Now the fight as to their acceptance is within the church itself, not outside. There's outsiders that keep feeding the fire and stoking the fire. This is why I also wrote the book, is to tell what's happening, because the church is such a divided place right now in Moscow that it needs, I hope the patriarch somehow after this war puts his foot down and like I told the people in at the Four Brothers Mine Area Museum now, where they have 7 churches and they're all holy rollers, that I said, we don't believe in these bones. I said, well, you know what? When the patriarch says you got to believe in the bones, you got to believe in the bones.
That's right.
Okay, because you don't believe, you believe what they tell you to believe, and that's it. Because right now you're believing only what some guy that's against the remains is telling you, and you haven't done any reading. You don't know the whole story. So, I went there and I was asked to give a talk at that spot, and I started, and slowly people started walking away.
Oh dear. Oh
well. They had the bishop and all those people that were just, I guess I must have embarrassed them, but because I was just telling the truth about what happened.
Don't worry about it. Now, I love this icon because, of course, you have the Czar and the Tsarina and their 4 daughters, and Alexei, of course, and new martyr Elizabeth. But I like it. You also have Michael here, so I never really see them all together. And when I saw this icon, I go, "This is really great," because all of those people that were martyred so violently and so horribly, they're all together, and I believe that they're all together in heaven right now.
Yeah, it's a fantastic icon. Yeah, I have an icon given to me by the nuns at the monastery in Ekaterinburg. It's big icon that I brought back to the United States. I have all 11 relics in there.
Wow. Wow.
Actually, I brought 2 icons like that. I gave one to my very, very good friends, and then the other one. Yeah.
And now that you've written the book, and I encourage everybody to read it, do you have anything coming up next, Captain Peter?
Right now, we have the Search for Michael coming up this Saturday.
Yeah.
With TV cameras, the whole thing. There's even going to be a whole big TV program or special on all our searches in Perm. The Russia TV one was like the NBC of Russia, So I hope that the word gets carried through. I'm trying to also publish this book in Russia, have it translated, because I think it'll do some good, and hopefully if we find Michael, and if I get a chance to go back, I can't leave my wife now at all.
Is he
Even
the last one that's missing? My Grand Duke Michael.
well, there he's one, and then there's the other ones are Elizabeth's well they're the Konstantinovich who are buried in they were buried in the on the compound of the Russian embassy in Beijing. And right now, some of the graves are under a golf course or whatever it is,
Okay.
or, you know, so, but I can't see going to Beijing and digging up the Russian embassy in Red China,
That,
that would
that
be a lot of fun,
Thank
you
you.
know.
Thank you so much for your work. It's been pretty tireless. So you've
I,
dedicated much of your life to this.
I've been working on this project already for 34 years, and I'm not finished.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Captain Peter.